When I was 29, I lost an entire year of my life to one fool. He was not my enemy. He had no plan. He was just a mouth. A friendly mouth, undisciplined, with no grasp of consequence. He cracked a joke at a dinner table. I explained. He twisted my words. I explained again. He laughed. I got angry. I typed a message. I deleted it. I typed it again. I sent it. A year later, I looked back and found a truth that froze me. He took nothing from me. I handed it to him myself. My time, my mornings, and those sleepless nights I laid those at his feet too. Most men think the most dangerous person in their life is a calculating enemy, an opponent in the shadows, a traitor waiting for the right moment. But there is a colder lesson Machiavelli has taught me. Strong men rarely fall to their enemies. They fall to the mouths that think they are helping while quietly poisoning them day after day. A scheming enemy you can study, a fool you cannot. He smiles while planting poison. He destroys without strategy. He ruins you without even knowing he is ruining. Tonight, I am going to tell you 6 laws I learned, paid for in blood, in years, and in mornings that never came back. Before I begin, comment this line right now. Silence is my shield. Write it like a contract you are signing with yourself, because from this moment on, you no longer live to be understood by fools. You live to become untouchable. The first law: I do not argue with an unforged mind. I do not argue with a man who has no discipline in his thinking, no loyalty to truth, no shame when he twists my words. The fool does not enter a conversation to understand. He enters to dominate the air in the room. He wants heat, not light. He wants reaction, not reason. He wants to feel power for one moment, even if that power has to be borrowed from my irritation. If I hand him my anger, my long explanations, my emotional energy, I have paid tribute to a man who does not deserve a single cent of it. There is a lesson from Machiavelli I understood too late. To survive, you must be cunning as a fox to see the trap, and fierce as a lion to scare off the wolves. A fox does not argue with the trap. The fox walks around it. A lion does not bark back at a mad dog. The lion keeps walking. I remember a morning 3 years ago. I was working on something that mattered. A message dropped in, one sarcastic line from a man I used to work with. I read it. My heart raced. I typed a reply. Deleted. Typed another. Deleted. 4 hours of that morning, the most valuable hours I had, got eaten by him. I never sent the reply. He still won, because he took the one thing I could not get back. 4 hours of focus. That is how the fool steals years of my life. Not through some dramatic betrayal, not through some grand battle, through small withdrawals of emotion. 10 minutes here, an angry text there, a morning quietly poisoned, a week spent thinking about something that did not deserve 5 seconds. Fools have patterns. I learned them. 1. He personalizes everything. I share an opinion. He hears an attack. I set a boundary. He hears rejection. I stay silent. He invents disrespect on his own. 2. He confuses feelings with facts. If he feels insulted, he believes I must be guilty. If he feels envious, he believes I must be arrogant. If he feels insecure, he believes I must be threatening him. 3. He cannot hold responsibility. He must escape blame, even if escape requires lying, exaggerating, or rewriting the entire conversation. The moment I saw those 3 patterns, I stopped treating the fool as a mystery. He is not a puzzle to solve. He is a warning sign to obey. A barking dog does not need a philosophical reply. It needs distance. I learned how to spot bait. Bait arrives disguised as disrespect, a sarcastic line, a false accusation, a message engineered to make my hand shake, a public insult designed to make me perform. The unforged man bites immediately. He thinks reacting proves strength. He thinks raising his voice proves power. And he is convinced that answering every accusation will somehow prove his innocence. But I came to understand something simpler. Bait is not an invitation to speak. Bait is a test of self-command. Very few things bother a fool more than a man who cannot be provoked. I did not become silent. I became selective. When I respond now, I respond from position, not from wound. My words got shorter, cleaner, final. I do not justify. I do not beg for basic respect. I do not write essays for men who deserve a single sentence. I say, that does not work for me. I say, do not speak to me like that. I say, this conversation is over. Then I act in line with the boundary I just spoke, because a boundary without consequence is decoration. The fool has to learn that access to me is conditional. He brings chaos. He loses closeness. He brings disrespect. He loses warmth. And the moment he brings manipulation, he stops receiving information altogether. That is not cruelty. That is rule. Comment this line right now. Access to me is a privilege, not a default. Sit with that for a second. Read it again. Because if you understand it the way I needed to, your entire life changes by tomorrow morning. The second law. I starve the chaos. Every fool eats one thing. Some eat my anger. Some eat my attention. Some eat my need to explain myself. Some eat the small satisfaction of watching me lose a composure they have never had. A fire does not need a plan to burn down a house. It only needs oxygen. To the fool, my reaction is oxygen. My long message is oxygen. My raised voice is oxygen. My effort to prove my innocence is oxygen. The more I give, the larger the flame grows. I remember one summer, a relative of mine called me every week. Always a crisis, always a wound, always a reason why my peace had to be sacrificed for his unsteadiness. At first, I thought I was being patient. Then I thought I was being loyal. Then one morning I woke up and realized something cold. I had become a servant to another man's storm. I was checking my phone with tension. I was choosing my words like I was negotiating with a bomb. I was shrinking my own strength just to keep a fool calm. That was not peace. That was captivity. Machiavelli did not teach me to hate him. Hatred is still a leash. The colder principle is this: you do not defeat a threat by fighting it head-on. You remove its access. You make the conspiracy structurally impossible, not by emotion, by architecture. I applied that principle to my own life. I became unavailable to chaos. Not occasionally, not through feeling, through structure. I do not answer every message right away. I do not accept every invitation. I do not discuss my plans with unstable men. I do not show weak points to people who enjoy pressure. I do not bring my dreams into rooms full of small minds. A fool cannot sabotage what he cannot reach. He cannot mock what he does not know. He cannot twist words I never gave him. And he cannot disrupt a schedule he was never allowed to step into. Privacy is not fear. Privacy is strategy. I also learned to separate compassion from access. I can understand why a man is broken without volunteering to be cut by his pieces. I can wish someone well from a distance. I can forgive a fool and still remove his chair from my dinner table. Forgiveness is inner work. Access is strategy. Never mix the two. The old version of me was not loyal. The old version was unforged. He thought endurance was strength. But sometimes, endurance is only fear wearing aristocratic clothes. A fortress does not apologize for having walls. The third law: never hand the map of your mind to a fool. I become exposed the moment I reveal too much to the wrong man. My plans, my fears, my weak points, my ambition, my pain, my next move, my unfinished dream. This is not small talk. These are coordinates. And when I hand my coordinates to a fool, I should not be surprised when chaos arrives at my door. I remember once telling an old friend about a project I was building, over dinner, in a relaxed moment. He was not my enemy. He was just a careless mouth. 3 weeks later, I heard my own story come back to me, distorted, from a man I had never met. He did not betray me because he hated me. He betrayed me because he had no inner government. He could not carry weight. He could not carry a secret. He heard something private and immediately had to spend it like loose change in a social transaction. That is why my first line of defense is not revenge. It is discretion. I do not need to punish men who mishandle what they should never have been given. I need to stop handing sacred things to careless hands. Machiavelli taught a cold principle about power. Any plan known by too many is already half defeated. Secrecy is the raw material of every victory. A man who cannot keep a secret should not have ambition. And a man who cannot filter who walks into his mind should not be surprised when his mind is occupied. I ask myself one question every week. Who has access to my inner world right now? Not who knows my name, not who smiles at me, not who has been around me for years, but who knows what makes me angry? Who knows what makes me insecure? Who knows what I am planning before I am strong enough to defend it? Who knows which words cut deepest into me? If the wrong man holds that information, I have manufactured a weapon and handed it to a man with no discipline. That is not openness. That is strategic carelessness. A king does not leave his battle plans on the table because he trusts the atmosphere. He controls the room. He controls the documents. He controls who walks in. I have to do the same with myself. I built 4 gates. People receive my politeness first. If they prove stable, they receive my time. If they prove loyal, they receive my trust. If they prove wise, they receive my truth. Most people will never pass all 4 gates. That is not my tragedy. That is my filter doing its job. A man with no filter becomes a public resource. Everyone takes from him. Everyone comments on him. Everyone pulls at him. Everyone feels entitled to an explanation. But a man with gates becomes hard to reach, hard to read, hard to manipulate. A fortress does not tell strangers where its walls are weakest. A fortress does not open its gate because someone knocks loudly. A fortress does not apologize for being guarded. Watch how people react when you become private. The respectful will understand. The wise will not push. The loyal will give you space. But the fool will be offended by your boundary because he believes access to you is his right. He will say you have changed. Good. You have. He will say you are distant. Correct. Distance is the consequence of chaos. He will say you think you are above other people. Let him think so. Do not rush to correct him. Let your silence teach him in the only language he respects. Absence. The 4th law. My boundary must be quiet and expensive. Weak men announce their boundaries like threats. They warn, they explain, they repeat, they complain, they beg other people to respect lines that should already be enforced by consequence. I learned something colder. A boundary is not a speech. A boundary is a system. It is not what I say when I am angry. It is what changes when someone crosses the line. There is a teaching from Machiavelli. Most men misunderstand their whole lives. If you must choose, choose to be feared rather than loved. The point is not that fear is the goal. The point is that love without consequence is cheap love. It gets withdrawn with a mood, a meal, a passing emotion. Respect that carries consequence is durable because it does not depend on how someone feels. It depends on the memory of what crossing the line cost them. The fool waits for emotion from me. He waits for a lecture. He waits for me to defend my dignity with shaking hands and a raised voice. I hand him none of that. I hand him distance. I hand him reduced access. I hand him less information. I hand him the consequence of discovering that my calm is not weakness. It is control. Most men fail with fools because their boundaries are too loud and too cheap. They say, "Do not disrespect me again." Then they stay. They say, "I am done." Then they keep replying. They say, "I will not put up with this anymore." Then they put up with it for another year. Every empty warning teaches the fool that my words are decoration. He learns that my anger is temporary. He learns that my standards are negotiable. He learns that his access can be restored with a weak apology and a few emotional tricks. I used to be that man. There was a season when I declared I was cutting contact with someone who kept crossing the line. I spoke hard. I spoke cold. I spoke final. 48 hours later, he sent a beautiful apology, and I replied. I broke my own boundary in 2 days. He did not break me. I taught him that the words I speak in anger only last until the anger cools. After that morning, I finally understood the truth. A boundary with no consequence is a trap I set for myself. That is how the fool forges a strong man into a weak one, not by beating me directly, by making me betray my own line, until self-respect becomes a performance instead of a law. I had to stop doing this. If my boundary has no consequence, it is not a boundary, it is a request, and requests get ignored by men who profit from my failure to enforce. The cold truth is this: the fool respects consequence more than explanation. He may not respect my peace, he may not respect my mind, he may not respect my time, but he understands loss. Loss of attention, loss of closeness, loss of reply, loss of privilege, loss of warmth, loss of knowledge about my life. When disrespect costs him nothing, he keeps spending it. When drama still earns my energy, he keeps producing it. When manipulation still gives him a seat at my table, he keeps using it. So I have to make instability expensive, not through cruelty, through structure. The man who brings confusion gets distance. The man who weaponizes my honesty gets silence. The man who repeats a betrayal of trust gets removed from the inner circle. This is not heartlessness. This is responsibility. Kindness without boundaries becomes self-destruction. There is one kind of fool I have to watch for, the kind who only understands my value the moment I withdraw it. When I am present, he takes me for granted. When I am patient, he mistakes it for weakness. When I forgive, he assumes there will always be another chance. Then, the moment I become distant, he is suddenly emotional. Suddenly, he wants to talk. Suddenly, he understands. Suddenly, he respects what he treated as nothing when it was free. I am not moved by late respect. Sometimes people do not apologize because they hurt me. They apologize because my absence inconveniences them. They do not regret the damage. They regret the loss of access. A strong man does not stage dramatic exits. He makes quiet adjustments. He does not need to declare, "You are no longer close to me." He simply stops bringing that person near. This is silent power. The loudest punishment is usually not punishment at all. It is absence. The fifth law: I do not let their reality become mine. Every fool carries a private world inside his head. That world is built from insecurity, resentment, impulse, fear, and unfinished humiliation. He does not see life clearly. He sees it through his wound. He sees disrespect where there is distance. He sees arrogance where there is confidence. He sees betrayal where there is a boundary. He sees an attack where there is only truth. If I am not careful, he will drag me into that distorted world and force me to defend myself against crimes that only exist in his imagination. Machiavelli shattered clean philosophy when he pointed to what he called the effectual truth, the truth of the world as it actually operates, not as we wish it would. Weak men live inside imagined truth, where if they are kind enough, others will be kind back. Strong men live inside the effectual truth, where action is measured by outcome, not by intention. A man who cannot tell those two truths apart will spend his life asking permission from a world that was never there. This is one of the most dangerous traps, not because the fool is right, but because he is loud. Noise creates pressure. Pressure creates doubt. Doubt creates explanation. The moment I start explaining myself to a man committed to a false version of reality, I am no longer standing inside my own kingdom. I am standing inside his courtroom. That is how strong men become exhausted. They do not lose because the fool defeats them. They lose because they accept the fool's frame. I never accept the fool's frame. If someone calls my boundary cruel, I do not rush to prove I am kind. If someone calls my silence arrogant, I do not rush to prove I am humble. If someone calls my ambition selfish, I do not rush to shrink myself for his comfort. Weak men panic when they are misunderstood. Strong men understand that being misunderstood is often the price of power. I cannot become untouchable and remain available to every interpretation at the same time. The two cannot live in the same man. People will call me cold when I stop bleeding for them. They will call me distant when I stop being useful. They will call me arrogant when they can no longer interrupt my focus. Let them call. Their labels are not the law. The fool often accuses me of exactly what he is doing. If he lies, he questions my honesty. If he manipulates, he calls me a manipulator. If he is envious, he calls me insecure. If he disrespects me, he says I am too sensitive. If he drains me, he says I abandoned him when I finally stepped back. This is projection. This is the mirror of a coward. Rather than face himself, he throws his reflection onto me and demands I carry it. I do not carry it. I do not accept emotional debt that is not mine. There is a cold line I live by. Their confusion is not a command to me. Just because someone misunderstands me does not mean I have to correct him. Just because someone feels insulted does not mean I did anything wrong. Just because someone is upset does not mean I have to surrender my position. Many people use emotion as a weapon because it worked on weak men in the past. They cry, they get angry, they blame, they accuse, they withdraw, they exaggerate. They build an emotional fog until the other person gives ground just to restore peace. But peace bought with surrender is not peace. It is war delayed. The same chaos always comes back. Because I rewarded it, I built an inner court where evidence matters more than accusation. What actually happened? What pattern has this man shown? What did he do when I set a boundary? What did he do when I refused to react? An apology is not transformation. A beautiful explanation is not a change of character. A dramatic promise is not proof. Proof is time. Proof is consistency. Until then, the gate stays closed. The old version of me died inside that man's courtroom. The old version stood there and waited for the verdict. The new version does not wait. The new version walks out of the room before the trial even begins. The new version understands that real freedom starts the moment I refuse to attend a trial I never agreed to. The sixth law: I observe the fool before he observes me. Most men get hurt by fools because they wait too long to observe. They want to believe the best. They want to give the benefit of the doubt. They want to call every red flag a misunderstanding. That is how the fool walks into my life. Not through power, through my refusal to see clearly. There is a principle from Machiavelli I now treat as oxygen. Read men by their actions, not by their words. A ruler who refuses to study the men close to him will eventually be ruled by them. I learned that lesson late and at a price. I remember a man who used to work alongside me. He told me about his old boss. That guy was insane. His ex, she was toxic. His former friends, those people were fake. Every story had only one victim: him. I should have seen it then. A man who takes no responsibility for his past will eventually make me responsible for his present. A man who never admits fault will not suddenly become fair to me. Do not wait for the knife in the back to admit the pattern was clear from the start. I learned to become an observer before becoming an attachment. I watch how men speak when they are frustrated. I watch how they treat people who can offer them nothing. I watch how they handle correction. I watch what they do when they are not the center of attention. I watch what they do when they think no one important is looking. The fool always leaks information about himself. He cannot help it. He tells me who he is through repetition. Does this man create guilt when he is told no? Does he use confusion to escape responsibility? Does he insult and then call it humor? Does he share secrets that do not belong to him? Does he change his story depending on the audience? Is he kind only when he needs something? Does he flatter me right before asking for access? These are not small things. These are measurements. I am not being harsh. I am reading accurately. A man who cannot read other men becomes food for the men who can. I also have to ask myself something uncomfortable. What have I taught people about how to handle me? Have I taught them that I can be interrupted? Have I taught them that my no can be negotiated? Have I taught them that my time is always available? Have I taught them that my attention can be bought with drama? If I have, I should not complain when the fool keeps using the lessons I gave him. A man's reaction to my boundary tells me everything, whether he ever valued me or only valued his control over me. I used to be the man who explained his silence to people who did not deserve to hear it. I defended boundaries in front of people who profited from me not having any. And worse than both of those, I handed my mind to people who could not even rule themselves. That man is dead. Tonight, I buried him with every word I have spoken to you. There is one final principle from Machiavelli I live by. Better to be feared than to be loved cheaply. I do not need the fool to fear me. I do not need him to love me. I need him to understand one thing only. He no longer has access. From tonight on, my peace is private territory. My focus is sacred ground. My presence has to be earned. I am not here to be liked by everyone. I am not here to be available to everyone. I am here to become disciplined, dangerous, cold, untouchable. Comment this final line. I am untouchable because I govern myself. Write it like a verdict on the old version of you, because that is exactly what it is. If this video sharpens something inside you, like it, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Because here, I do not train men to be loud. I train them to be powerful.